In today's world of work, no matter the field you enter, whether you're an entrepreneur or the head of a Fortune 500 company, we're all looking for the newest line of thinking which provide us with a competitive advantage and a win over our competition, which will help improve workplace performance, productivity, and profitability. However, in order to take advantage of this new line of thinking as a business operation, clarity is a must. A Fortune 30 study published by Forbes found that 80% of employees are lost to unproductive time or activities at work which management cannot get back. Therefore, in alignment with your clarity as an organizational leader and entrepreneur is essentially important to achieve your success. Katie Edwards Corbin is a spiritual and business advisor who helps entrepreneurs, organizations, and corporations tune into their aligned and authentic business model, which best serves them while creating a massive impact. She says it's all about getting clarity around your business model and what you plan to create with the ever-evolving phases of your business. According to Edwards Corbin, every phase of your business needs to morph and change in order for you to access the greatest financial flow and time freedom. She joined me this week to discuss how she transforms the spiritual alignment of businesses and how she helps them maximize their most profit. And she also took some time to share her own personal journey of healing and how she's always had a knack for wanting to help people. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. If you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, and I'm super excited to learn how you help businesses gain clarity and direction in their operation. Great to see you this afternoon, and happy Friday there, Katie.
Yes, you too, Kevin.
So, yeah, thanks so much. I know, Katie, that you work with businesses to really define what their mission is and vision is for their sort of operation. So I wonder if you can tell me about all the great work that you do.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So yeah, I definitely help with businesses with their mission and their growth strategies, especially in the health and wellness space, because I've actually been in that space for the last 14 years myself. And I've grown my own business and then kind of shot off in helping other people grow their businesses as well.
Absolutely. And you say your growth journey began when you were a kid and when you were on your own journey of healing. So I'm wondering if you can tell me more.
Absolutely. So I actually was pretty sick as a kid. I tended to have a lot of allergies and I tended to have a lot of illnesses, just catching things easy and having, never really fully recovering from illness. And I actually got into alternative medicine when my mom took me to a chiropractor when I was 12 years old. And that actually led me on to my natural healing journey and healing my body on my own versus just taking medications and living with a lot of the things I was struggling with.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kenny, tell me how you help businesses, particularly in the health and wellness space, gain clarity because it's not always the same as a normal business, isn't it?
Yes, it can be very different, especially a lot of health and wellness practitioners often start as a solo entrepreneur, basically just using their service as a job. And then a lot of times they'll grow and they'll hit these plateaus where they have to start to hire people or create things outside of themselves where it doesn't create time for money. So I work with a lot of clinicians and even coaches that are in the health and wellness field that grew their business basically from the ground up. They didn't buy a franchise, and they basically used their passion and created a business out of it. So it can come with a lot of growth hurdles, and the passion that they have needs to be compensated for, the business that they have too as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kenny, I'm wondering if you can always also tell me about determining passion and purpose within a business because you say that it's what you need to be successful in business each and every day. So I'm wondering if you can elaborate on that for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the business owners that usually come to me to work with me, they're looking for, sometimes their passion is a little bit burnt out because they've maybe burned themselves into the ground, or they've seen so many people that they can't keep up with the demand. So I like to recreate that mission so it also works for them in the long haul and in their career, because a lot of times doctors and healers and clinicians can really get burnt out in their passion because they can overuse it a little bit, right? So it's almost like that balance needs to come back in, especially with seasoned entrepreneurs.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Kenny, I'm also curious to get your thoughts on the term gratitude with purpose. And what does that mean to you from a business perspective when you hear that term?
Yeah, so gratitude to me, not just means like being grateful for things, but actually following through with what your words are, right? So almost showing gratitude, words should follow action. So when it comes to business, being kind of grateful in your business, you could say like, oh, I'm so grateful for my business. But if your actions are almost resentful on the other end, right? Like you're pushing yourself too hard or working too many hours, the gratitude tends to be too small for people. We all want to be grateful as humans. I feel like most people anyways. But if we don't follow our gratitude practice with actual actions that follow up that, it can create a lot of friction and resentment towards our business and also towards ourselves. So really gratitude for me is a practice that creates action that brings joy back into your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Kenny, when we look at effective self development and really taking ownership of our own future, how do you define effective self development and really taking ownership of your own prosperity in life and in business?
Yes. So this is a great question, because I sometimes think people think self-development is just like reading books or meditating or doing something better to help yourself. For me, self-development, it comes with time, right? And when I know that I'm self-developing or my clients are self-developing or somebody I'm talking to has growth, it's like you can look at yourself and see your reactions are different. You can look at yourself and see your responses to things are different. You can look at yourself and see and be like, wow, I've really grown. So self-development is, I would say, not even a linear path. It's kind of a bumpy path, right? Like we can look back at ourselves and say like, wow, we've really grown and created this development inside of ourselves. And really that self-development carries over into business. We think it's separate, but it really carries over into how we run things, how we do things on a daily basis. And that can accumulate and create more of an impact for the entrepreneur and the people that the entrepreneur is serving.
And I know for you, a big part of what you do is also about spiritual growth. So tell me about how spiritual growth and self development are interconnected.
Yes. So I feel like spiritual growth and self-development are very interconnected, because It's almost as if they coincide with each other for a lot of people. It doesn't mean that somebody that's not spiritual can't self-develop themselves, right? Having that inner self-development can make them a better person, or, be more high performing or whatever they're seeking. But I've always found in my life that they always go hand in hand. The more self-developed I feel, the closer I also feel to God, right? The closer I feel to my faith. And, my faith is often my guiding light, even over reading the next self-development book. It's almost like the inner wisdom can come through and even show you, right? Like where are areas that you need to work on, right? Where are areas that we need to improve upon if you kind of walk by that faith? So I feel like faith even comes before, for me, me personally, even over the development of myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Katie, I'm curious to ask you about creating a competitive advantage in business and how do you think we do that effectively?
So in my opinion, the best competitive advantage is authenticity, ultimately, right? So being yourself, following what's true to you, following your own true north. And that's going to be the best competitive advantage over any marketing scheme, anything that we could add into our business. It's like that authenticity is our biggest advantage. The communication of that authenticity is sometimes what we have to tweak, though. Because sometimes people can they have layers kind of over who they really are, right? Like who society has made us to be, who our parents have made us to be, who we think we are ultimately. So we can kind of get into those deeper layers of like, who are we and what message are we here to bring to the world? And that's going to be your biggest competitive advantage, I personally think.
Yeah, and to that vein, Katie, I'm also curious to ask you about inclusion and equity in business. I was born with cerebral palsy, Katie, and outside of hosting this podcast, I work with businesses to amplify the hiring of folks with disabilities. So tell me, what do you think about an inclusive future in business? What do you think of?
I think it's absolutely necessary too, as well, because it's like I think that we're coming to a place, especially in the last couple of years, where we're looking at like what's kind of missing, what's kind of missing from businesses, what is like considered the norm, and then like what structures and traditions, right, that are considered norm need to be changed. So I really think that I honor you for doing that too, as well, because it's like I think people just go from their own level of understanding, and if they don't understand outside that level, they don't know. So the awareness of it needs to really be broadcasted so people can really understand at another level, so they can ultimately change it, because we really can't change what we don't know and what we don't understand.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kenny, I'm also curious to ask you about influences in your own sort of business journey and who influenced you personally and professionally to go on the current path that you're on.
Yeah, so I actually was really honored to have a lot of great influencers in my lifetime. And my family was a big influence for me, because they always pretty much taught me I can do and be whatever I want to be. My grandma was a big influence for me too, as well, because she always supported me in what I wanted to do in life. So I had a really great familial start. And then I when I first started in business, I met a few mentors that really took me under their wing and helped me understand early, because I started at 24, what it meant, right? I mean, I made a lot of mistakes too in my years of business, but having somebody to be there and just ask questions, and they've been there before, was really pivotal in my experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that end, I'm also curious to ask you about creating creativity in business and really finding sort of a niche that sets you apart from the competition. So tell me about creating business creativity and what that looks like in your opinion.
Yes, thank you, Kevin. So I think that in my view of creativity is almost like we are kind of in the times where we are allowed to be really influential in terms of like our own self, right? We have access to social media. We can get in front of people. We don't have to like book this, venue. And that's the only way we talk to people like before social media. So I feel like we can be more creative in the ways that we reach people, and we can be more creative in the methodologies that we're using to get in front of people. And that's the really cool part about the internet and how it's really created that opportunity for a lot of entrepreneurs. But I feel like entrepreneurs usually have creative habits that they kind of get into, right? There's usually like the really technical and structural entrepreneurs, and then there's almost like these creative, innovative entrepreneurs too as well. And I feel like the platforms available now for those creatives, they can just get they can get so creative with it, right? Like, who do I want to talk to? Who do I want to be in front of? How do I want my message to be reached to other people? So there's just so many possibilities available for people now.
Yeah, absolutely. And you brought up habits, so I'll just follow up with this. How do you think we can create good business habits that can also translate into our personal lives as well?
Absolutely. So I truly believe, people say like, oh, how do you have motivation to do things? I'm like, I don't run off motivation. I run off passion, habits, and consistency. So habits is the one thing that really, it's like the blocks of your day, right? So when we can actually create better habits, like step by step, right? It's going to be, okay, I need to move more. So what would that include? Would that include 10 minutes a day? Would that include 20 minutes a day? Like, we don't have to overhaul everything. Our habits actually can really create higher performing people or entrepreneurs, right? If we can actually look at, okay, what habit am I doing? Am I wasting time? Entrepreneurs sometimes complain, I don't have enough time. Well, what are you doing that's wasting your time? Can you replace that time wasters, right? Like scrolling on social media, if it's not part of your, if it's just kind of wasting time, can you replace that with exercise? Like, if we can actually build better habits, we'll build better days, which will build better years, and ultimately build a better legacy for people.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about creativity and invention, and certainly the pandemic has caused us all to sort of reconsider our creativity. So I'm curious, Katie, how do you think the pandemic has affected businesses in general and the health business field as well?
So yeah, this is a great question, Kevin. So a lot of practitioners, especially when they were in person and hands-on, got really affected by the pandemic. Like, they almost the rug got pulled out from all of us, right? And it was like, what do I do now if I'm a hands-on practitioner? So we had to innovate a lot, right? Like, we had to say like, okay, what can I do outside of in person? So, that's where telehealth really got big for a lot of people, where it was like, okay, I don't have to be in person to do this, this, and this, but for some practitioners, it still required it. So it was almost like they had to get innovated on how they could still do the majority of what they're doing and keep their business running without having to be in person. Now, obviously that changed as we went through it, where things had to be in place and regulations and stuff like that, but it really made everyone think differently, which was like, when everybody's at a habit pattern and the train's moving and all of a sudden the train stops, everybody has to get thinking in a different way. So I think it was kind of even though it was very hard and horrible for people, it started making people think and have to get creative and innovative with their ideas and the way that they were doing business.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that end, Katie, I'm also wondering your thoughts on business intuition and women's empowerment and women's place in business as well. How do you view those two things, and do you think they're interconnected at all?
Yes. And I'm really passionate about this, so thank you for bringing this question forward. So I'm a big component, being a woman in business too as well, helping other women business owners really create growth in their companies and really leave legacies for themselves and their families. Because when we're in more of a male-dominated world, sometimes women can kind of come at the wayside, right? Like, there's more men in business than there are in women. So for me, it's like, that empowerment of a woman that you can do it. Like you can do it. Like you can do what you want to do in life, right? Whatever business you want to create. I'm all about that inner structure that's created, that inner resiliency, because you do become fairly resilient as an entrepreneur over the years if you've been through a lot of things. That includes growth or inhibiting growth, like things that didn't go the way that you wanted to. I also think, in general, I think men are very intuitive, but women carry sometimes a different perspective of intuition, just like men think differently than women in general. I mean, our brains are structured differently. So I feel like that inner wisdom that women can often bring to the field of entrepreneurship is highly valuable, right? It actually can help people think outside the box.
Yeah, and I've got a couple more questions for you, and the first has to do with how do you think we can avoid the business roller coaster of emotions? Because anyone in business knows that you don't turn on a computer and make hundreds of thousands of dollars without effort and going through adversity. So, in your view, what is the key to sort of avoiding the pitfalls of business and minimizing that business roller coaster as much as you can?
Yes. Yes, the roller coaster is not a fun roller coaster to be on, right? It's not, we get on it and we're like, oh my gosh, this is hard. So, I think like almost having the awareness of it first, like you will have ups and downs in business. I think sometimes when you first get into entrepreneurship, we think it's just this straight line up. And then when it becomes up and down, you're like, oh my God, am I doing it wrong? So having awareness that there is a cycle to business, that there is almost, especially in the early years, there is this kind of feast and famine that we'll go through. The one thing I'll say is like, it does create resiliency, but on the other end, what we can do to prevent that is create systems and structures and methodologies that pull us outside of that, because we're going to have a bad day in business. I mean, we're human, right? So it's like some days we might be tired, some days we might not want to show up. So if we can create methodologies and systems and structures that allow the business to run outside of us, it creates less of an emotional impact on the business owner. So if businesses don't have procedures or marketing that really can amp up if they're slow. So say if a clinician is slow and they're like, I need new clients. If you don't have the way, you're going to go pretty far down into the darkness before you come back up. So having those structures set up, or the people to get to the structures, is highly valuable. So it's almost building out your network, building out your support system, and having those structures in place can really pull out that emotional roller coaster for a lot of entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and Katie, I know that you work with a variety of different people, but I'm also curious to ask you, what brings you the biggest smile personally in business? Is there a certain area of business that you like working on more than others?
So usually my favorite area I like to work on is when business is to the maximum capacity, and then almost like, how do we get outside of that capacity? So if it's somebody that's super booked out and they're on a waiting list and they want to get outside that, trading time for money, creating courses or programs or certifications, or teaching other clinicians how to do what they do and hiring out, whether it's establishing a company culture and hiring more people. So my favorite area to work on is when people are really really on a trajectory of growth, and how to create that trajectory with not a lot of growing pains. You know how we grow and then we'll have the pain with it. It's like every time we grow, we're going to have a lot of issues that come up too as well. So that's really the area that I can help a lot of entrepreneurs and clinicians on.
Yeah, and just before we started our call today, Katie, you told me about the importance of really taking a pause this weekend and really coming to your inner center. So I'm curious to finally ask you about how you create sort of business balance in business, and really juggling your personal life as well.
Yeah, so this is something I've learned through error. I will say that personally. I have a really busy life. I actually I homeschool my young children, and I have a husband, and I run two businesses, and so I'm very busy, and I've always been highly energetic. But the one thing I've learned when I've gotten to places of being burnt out and almost too busy, that I have to schedule in those places of rejuvenation and renewal. And whether it's a weekend or a week or, 2 weeks, depending on where, I'm at in my business. And if I have really busy periods, I'll actually schedule in longer periods of time. But I used to think I was kind of being lazy, right? Like I used to think I was like not doing enough, but I was like, the only way I'm actually going to sustain this with not getting sick, right? Because that's very important to me, obviously, because I've been there. And in sustaining my long-term vision and legacy is scheduling in those rejuvenation retreats and is scheduling in the time for myself. That's just as important as working.
Yeah, absolutely. And Katie, my final question for you has to do with your own personal and professional legacy. I know you've brought it up a couple of times during our conversation this afternoon. So when you look at your own personal and professional legacy, how do you want that to be defined?
Yeah, so that's it. That's such a great question. I've actually never really answered this question, so thank you for even asking me this so I can define it. Me personally, like my legacy goes into my family, right? Like what it's going to do for me and my family over time. But really, my legacy that I want to create is bringing the wisdom and the knowledge that I've learned through my knowing and my experiencing to other people. So it almost can be imprinted in them and help them, whether that's in programs or books or helping them growing their business and their business helps other people. Really, the legacy that I want to create is more of a ripple effect long term, where people, I've helped a business grow and they've helped other people, right? So really I see that big wave effect that I'm that I want to contribute to the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, Katie, tell me if people want to get connected with you, what's the best way they can do that?
Yeah, so I'm very active on Facebook, so you can find me at Katie Edwards Corbin if you just search on Facebook. And the other way, very easy to connect with me, is on my website. It's just beyondinstitute.org.
Fantastic. Well, Katie, I couldn't think of a better way to end my week than to have a conversation with you about business intuition and about health and welfare of businesses. So I want to thank you for your time, expertise, and for joining me this afternoon. It's most appreciated.
Thank you, Kevin. It's an honor to be here.